and that they haven't kind of left anything really glaring or did anything that was kind of alarmingly wrong. So this is kind of that meeting. Mark Rutledge, and we also have Megan on the line. If you guys want to introduce yourself and run us through your body of work. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually introduce us both, Megan Jensen and myself. Megan is a young Indigenous artist, dancer, and student of Northwest Coast Design. Guna is of Daka, Tlingit, and Tegishquan ancestry from the Daklahwadi clan, which falls under the Wolf and Eagle moiety. Her family has made the beautiful area of the Southern Lakes and the Yukon Territory their home for numerous generations. Megan has practiced and studied the intricate and incredibly complex work of Northwest Coast Design for 10 years and continues to build on her knowledge of Tlingit formline. Majority of her practice has been dedicated to the revitalization of traditional Northwest Coast design. However, she is also critically reflecting on where it will go in the future. Megan plays with the relationship of the ancient and the contemporary and strives to enable her audience to highly consider where a young Indigenous artist positions themselves in a complex cultural landscape in an industrialized world. Megan has just completed her Bachelor of Visual Arts from Emily Carr University of Art and Design back in spring of 2020. Congratulations, Megan. That's quite the accomplishment. Through her journey in academia, Megan has come to realize the need for a larger, diverse demographic in Canadian institutions. As a young Indigenous female, Guna aspires to become a university professor, but will never stop evolving her artistic career. She aspires to engage the younger generations in aiding to identify what it means to be Indigenous in the contemporary moment, and in turn, how this influences our artistic cultural practices. Guna's mandate as a facilitator is also to foster a more diverse, dynamic, and innovative environment for learning, all the while allowing her designs and paintings to ever evolve and mirror the realities of a young Indigenous female artist in the contemporary moment, trying to find her way. Myself, my name is Mark Rutledge. I'm a designer with over 30 years of experience. I'm one of a handful of Indigenous designers with the skills and knowledge to produce outstanding work for my clients. I guess what I do is I embrace my creative instincts and intuition and love to cultivate flawless outcomes in branding, photography, illustration, and web development. I'm Anishinaabe, a member of the Little Grand Rapids First Nation in Manitoba, and I live and work on the Kwalendon and Ta'anquachan Council territories here in Whitehorse, Yukon. I'm also a men's traditional dancer and has had the honor and privilege to perform all over Turtle Island, and have shared stories and teachings and knowledge to my 3 children, who all dance as well. I also serve as the national president of the Graphic Designers of Canada. I am the first Indigenous president in the 65-year history of the organization, and I'm proud to say that I lead from Canada's north. During my first few weeks as president, I've also established the Gdc Scholarship, honoring my mom, the Sherilyn Rutledge Northern Indigenous Student Award. Encourages Indigenous youth to pursue a career in graphic design. With a commitment from many donors across Canada, I've ensured that the scholarship will live on in perpetuity. And I also ensure that future generations of Indigenous youth will have the assistance they need to fulfill their dreams and to keep that creative flame stoked. So without further ado, I will begin to, hopefully this will work, share my screen with you to present the initial concepts for this project. Okay, can everyone see the intro screen right now?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Megan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show up the 3 options, and then if you can pipe or comment in and describe for us the rationale behind each of these 3 options.
Go now?
Yes, please.
So first logo, themes that we were told were really important was this idea of coming together in unity, but also acknowledging how we are distinct from one another, and we are all our own community, but we're coming together and we're gathering. So there's 3 different themes essentially going on in the logo right now. There's at the bottom, there's this form line that's metaphorically representing a wave. And then there's 3 different canoes, 3 different people in each one that's representing the different nations. And they're all coming towards a longhouse, which has a human design in it. And the canoes just have a simple hand design in it as well.
Well, we should also mention that the positioning of the 3 figures.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 figures are facing towards the land, and so this perspective from, I guess, a viewer's standpoint is that we're following them along on this journey together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we've also created the illustration in such a way that we are part of this journey as well.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Megan, on option 2.
Option 2, another theme that was kind of a part of the ideation process was thinking about a relationship to cedar and cedar rope, and kind of the idea of how we're all our own strands of community, but we're weaving ourselves together to be able to be as strong as we can possibly be. And so that's a theme that's represented in color with, you know, the canoes, and the same color is represented in the longhouse. And then there's this idea of having the circle of the actual logo being a cedar rope. And then our third option is kind of merging these ideas together, still having that blue color, but thinking about if there was a way we can integrate that cedar concept while still having that beautiful blue and red contrast that is quite iconic with our communities. You see it a lot in all of our, you know, totem poles and our artwork. So it felt like it felt like a good route to go in terms of color.
And it should also be thanks Megan for giving us the rationale. On another note, it should be noted that a lot of in these options there is no direct reference to one particular clan. We wanted to sort of keep that somewhat neutral, because if we went ahead and decided to put all of the clans in there, we would run out of space, or there wouldn't be enough room to respectfully include all of the necessary details for each of those clan moieties, because some of them are rather intricate. And so we wanted to stay away from particular the particular clans, and just what you'll see is that it's a human figure or the hands. So, and then we also wanted to have the figures facing away from us, because we didn't want to also detail too much or dive too much into what people look like, the shade of their skin, whether it's male or female. What we wanted to do was focus much more on the idea or the concept of people. So this way, it could be an elder, it could be a younger person. That is up for the viewer to decide. But we wanted to include the 3 figures that represent the coming together of the 3 nations.
And in that simplicity, because of the simplicity, it represents everyone too, I think. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm muted. My lips are flapping, but there's nothing coming out. Okay, so I guess this is where we would like some of your feedback.
Good afternoon, M and M. Is that how we refer to you?
Mark.
Mark and Megan.
Sure,
Megan.
sure.
That works.
Works for me.
So just a couple of questions, and there's not being critical or anything like that. But the question is, if I were on a coast on one hand, how does this tell me who Doc Ka is? Doc Ka. And if I'm on inland and I'm Tagish and I'm looking at that, and how do I know that this is Doc Ka, right? What is Doc Ka? Can you just talk around that a little bit?
Want to talk, Mark, or me?
Yeah, so what's not in this presentation at this time is the actual word mark that will accompany the artwork. So we'll actually have Dakar and the name and maybe even a tagline that will go along with this particular piece of art. So that'll have, it'll give you a much clearer picture as to who we are actually referencing here.
And a conversation that also happened last week, if there's a way for it to look as though these people are coming to the land instead of it looking just like ocean. It's just that visually right now, in this particular image too, the turquoise is covering the entire image. But that's something that was talked about last week as well, as how we can also visually translate more that it looks inland. This one looks pretty oceanic too. But that could be a discussion of how we can make it translate more inland, as if it's coming. Yeah, we're coming to land or something like that. Or maybe even visually, the longhouse could be altered a bit. That could be another option. Or what coming to the land looks like.
I think one of the things when you look at that, I'm like with Dhaka, how I understand it, and of course I'm no expert on it and whatnot, but it's when the people came and looked over the mountains and came inland. And I think that story in terms of that background history in terms of, Dhaka is meaning the people that came inland. Obviously it has the coastal kind of influences, but also there's that inland relationship, and that's sort of what creates that distinction, right? When you also look at inland, some of the dialects, for example, when we look at the inland dialect, it hasn't influenced the Tagish sort of intonations and sounds and things like that. And I just say that because in terms of some of the background kind of thinking, these are some of the things that we start saying, well, how do we fit that in? And, you guys are the experts in terms of how do we, sort of do the graphics, or, how do we depict the Dhaka? So when people look at this, they say, oh, that's Dhaka, right? I think it's important that, obviously you have the three First Nations, but again, what we talked about a little bit is that the strength of the nations are actually in the clans, not so much in the communities, right? But it's those clans. And I appreciate, because there's something like 130, 8 different clans on the coast, coastal. And so you can't put that together in that sense. But the question is that how do we, how does that fit in, if you will, or is there a way to do that? I'm not sure. There are some of the stories, each of the clans have stories about coming in. So I think these are just questions that sort of roll around in my mind, right? To start saying, when we look at that, what does, how does that depict, right? Dhaka. Just some questions, I guess.
Mark, that's a great helpful comments for us. Now, in terms of branding, branding is much more than just a logo and a word mark. It also includes the written word, the language, how we use that, but it also includes photography and imagery. So when we begin to actually roll out the brand for this project, we're also going to be looking at how we use images, and those images could really describe what you are mentioning. The mountains, the inland Tlingit, and the land in which we find ourselves on. And I think that will go a long way into describing or making sure that this is who we are talking about, not just in the logo format, but in the way the logo, the colors, the photography, and all of the elements that come together to form a brand for this project. And so when we talk about the other applications of this, we talk about reports and posters and such that this could then be applied to. So we're only presenting the very first part of a much larger branding system that will be applied. So hopefully that'll address some of the concerns that you may have. As we move forward, you'll see more and more focus in on the inline Tlingit.
I see that Davey K had his hand up, but I got a couple of other thoughts. And again, I'm not trying to be critical or judgmental or anything. I'm just trying to give some sort of perspectives and thoughts around what we sort of hear in the communities, or some perspectives of some of this stuff and whatnot. But Davey K, you had a question or your hand up?
Yeah, I do. And thank you for that. And I'll be critical as all hell, because that's what I'm all about. I enjoy good art, so that's why I can be critical. And thanks very much, Megan and Mark, for what you've pulled together here. It's nice. And as you described it, I could see everything you're describing. I actually prefer option 3. If you could go back to option 3. Yeah, I like that option for some reason, because it pops out at me. Is that color, is that an aqua water type of color?
Yeah, it's kind of a turquoisey green color.
Sure, that's a turquoisey green, and that's reflected in water bodies all over the place. So it could be seen as that. So some comments. Good stuff. I liked what you'd said, Mark. I think when you said that keep it simple, I think that's really what you need to do too. And in terms of branding, that probably encourages people to see what they want to see within this. So the very first thing that jumped out at me, though, when I looked at all 3 of them, is that one of those people seems to be ahead of the other 2. That's not fitting with the theme of what we're trying to do. And I looked at it, and that's what it seems to me. How you would fix that, I don't know. Just level them all off and keep them the same height, but that's not my bailiwick. So I'll let you guys know that that's one of my impressions. If we're going to be equal, they have to look equal. As I grew up in the inland, there was never talk of totem poles. Never, ever, ever talk of totem poles. And as we've evolved in our culture and expanding our thoughts of and through art and healing, and was using them as vehicles for healing, I've come to accept that totem poles are a rich part of our life. Now, Sam Johnson and I had this conversation with many people that are not here with us anymore. And in particular, I had a conversation with Sam, and I asked Sam about this. And Sam explained it to me this way. And this is what I think would be helpful, because Mark is bang on when he says, it's got to tell you who we are. What Sam told me, he says, is that totem poles, if you look at our totem poles, they're facing the inland from the water. On the coast, they usually face the water. With us, they face away from the water to signify that we're inland. So just knowing that, what if you were to look at, and why I like this is because if you could enhance the water in the very bottom foreground, it looks like you're coming from the water, you're going inland and into that longhouse, the 3 nations together. So those are just my points right there. They don't look equal, and it could fit with some of your sound bites or whatever they might be, Mark, as you were saying earlier. You have to look at it in the whole context. It might enhance the viewer or encourage the viewer to look at it from the way I've just described it. We're coming from the ocean inland, and the watercolors riffling on the bottom, they're showing where we're at. And Mark's idea about it can't be about the communities, it's more about who we are. So how you do that with that longhouse, with the people depicted, the human, Mark's uncle, Pete Sidney, and he is my third cousin, once said to me, he said, Klinget means human being. That's what Uncle Pete said. It means a human being. So you've got all that captured in there. As I look at it, you've got a lot of that captured in there. So it's how you interpret it, I guess. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dave. You know, making the three characters in their canoes equal size and equal or on a balance, that's something that we could definitely incorporate into the final artwork. So that's not too difficult to do, and we could definitely, you know, if it means that we change the color here in the wave pattern, maybe it's a lighter blue. We can definitely do that so that we have that, I guess, transition from the ocean to the inland. That's something definitely that we could work on.
So just some other thoughts, because I think, you know, there's some key elements in terms of Dakar, and that's the mountains, the waters, the whole Southern Lakes watershed just sort of connects us, right? That watershed, those mountains, you know, those are the key, some of the key components of that, you know, and some of the clans, in terms of that, the clans sort of bind us together because they're not distinct communities. They, you know, and I don't know, it's not trying to say, you know, how to do that, but the question is, how do you, you know, that's why you guys are paid the big bucks, right? To figure out how to depict that into some sort of a graphics and whatnot. And yes, we need to be able to tell stories because, I mean, you know, whether it's totems or icons, there's usually a story that goes with it. But what we need to do is begin to get a consistent story that builds a relationship between these three communities, these, you know, these three communities that form this inland nation of Dakar, if you will. Anyway, I just throw that out. You guys, looks good. We're moving in the right track, but I think it needs still a little bit more work.
You know what we could do, and I'm just thinking about this, Mark, is that maybe we, you know, we could bump down the longhouse a bit, and maybe that's where we can begin to include some of those mountains that you had mentioned. Not very detailed, but enough to acknowledge that, you know, there are mountains here and that this is part of the land. And I think that might go a long way to helping further explain the particular location of the inland peoples. Chantel, do you have any comments?
Hey there, sorry, you've got me twice on here and my audio appears to be working on one and my picture on the other, but not on both. So I don't actually feel comfortable to provide comments. Visually, I like the third option, but it really, in terms of the cultural appropriateness and any of the specifics that are being mentioned, unfortunately, I have to defer. So I would ask probably to get some input from Louise as governance manager. She's on a different time zone and had another meeting and couldn't be at this one, unfortunately. But I am probably going to request some of that assistance. I'm a bit of the younger generation. I'm not immersed in some of the art world and some of the cultural pieces that some of the rest of you are. But I visually love the way it looks. I recognize the comments that are being stated by Mark and Dave, and I'm really appreciating that insight too. I think I'm learning a lot here. So apologies for not being able to respond more substantively. I'm a little bit more of the paperwork girl on this one.
Okay, thank you, Chantal. Let's see, who else has not commented on this so far, provided the input? It's funny, I can't see names. I just see faces.
Roberta, Stewart.
I'm also wondering, Charlie, if you have any comments or thoughts, or how does it feel to you?
Charlie, how do you feel? Just wanted to say, Megan, I really enjoyed your presentations here. Like, it's really beautiful work. I appreciate Dave and Mark's comments on some of the protocols within the artwork and the significance of the meaning behind them. I had a conversation with Gary about the spelling with Daka and the meanings with the coastal and the inland. I was just going to send out a little definition that Gary sent me about it. Yeah. Nice job.
Hey guys, it's Dave here again. And not sure the timeliness of whatnot here, but like Chantel, I'm kind of here by myself, and I would much prefer that I have Bessie and others look at this and really see if they can add to it as well. So I'd like to circulate it amongst my elders caucus a bit here, and I'm not sure if these are the ones we would use, or would you like to use the ones that we're going to wait for?
I do want to apologize. Sorry, I didn't introduce Stuart. He is our communications rep with Carcross Takish. So, welcome, Stuart.
And can I add one thing? I think it's a good idea that we bring it to the advisory committee day. But I think it's important that we have Mark and Megan there to be able to explain what the thought of it is behind the actual graphic design. Because there are no words accompanying this yet. And so I think it's important that we give context.
Lynn, just a technical note. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but it was almost slow motion. Just your feed, and I don't know if maybe turning off your video might help with the audio.
Okay, I know. Okay, hold on. Okay.
So I believe I got the core gist of that message was to include a rationale along with this presentation, so that.
Yeah, it was, but it was more, no, it was not necessarily include a rationale, but I said that it was important that you and Megan be part of, if we're presenting it to others, it would be essential that there's context given to it, because just the images, I mean, we know that there will be words accompanied with that, but people need to know the thought behind it. And I have to say, I like, thank you.
So I think this is part of the relationship building process, right? This is a part of it. It's not something that we're going to try to do and then say, here it is. And I think Dave's comments and I think Chantel's comments are very important. Not to say that we don't have the dialogue, but I think we do need to sort of vet it within the community and start the dialogue in the community. Because it's when we hear some of those stories around it, whether it's narrative or a presentation. I have no difficulty with Mark, the M&M team sort of doing a presentation or setting something up. But I think what we're trying to do is to pull it in, because this is part of the relationship building process. It's not a product that we're going to get that sort of says, okay, now let's build that relationship. This is a process that we as communities and the elders in the communities give dialogue and input. And it's really, how do we try to incorporate that dialogue and input into this totem or icon or however we want to call it, this thing of describing, because it's really one of the key fundamental parts of beginning to describe who we are, right? The elders have said it, and we've got some research materials in terms of what it is, and there's different approaches. So I think we're on the right track. I think it's a process of let's get some dialogue from some of the elders in the community, whether that's with each of the communities, and really it's in a process of not trying to say this is what it is, but it's in a process of trying to say, how do we describe who we are through this visual image, right? And to get that input. So I think it becomes a really part of the relationship building process. If we do this in this proper manner, that will start pulling us together. So I just want to point that out. Our end product here is really about a relationship, as opposed to, only just an icon or an image.
Lynn or Jesse? I'm not sure who to ask, but I'm wondering if these images can be sent out by email with some of the comments that have been provided by Mark and Dave particularly, so that I can more accurately translate this on to some of the people who would need to review it from a cultural perspective for TRT. Would that be possible?
Hello, I'll jump in here. It's Blair. So great presentation, everybody. I just wanted to add some comments on the process. I just wanted to make sure that we were aware that there is kind of a long branding process. As Mark mentioned, there's all these other things that are going to come from it. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not putting the expectation on the contractors that they have to do a number of presentations and so forth. So just to be really clear with them on the outset of this meeting of kind of what our next steps are. I'm seeing a lot of different suggestions, and maybe Mark, you can kind of let us know what your process is typically in this type of scenario, and we can kind of go from there.
I guess the biggest challenge for me and as a designer is that when we talk about certain design processes, we try to limit the amount of people that we consult with, and there is a reason why we do this, and that's because I'm not. It's that everyone all of a sudden, and this is going to be in a friendly way, that everyone becomes a designer, and that everyone wants to have their ideas and thoughts put into a logo. Now, we call this design by committee, and sometimes sometimes it can be handled well if it's done and facilitated properly, but in a lot of cases, and in my experience, we end up going down a bunch of rabbit holes. And we end up with a product that really doesn't focus in on, or no longer focuses in on the true nature of what the project is or what the organization is all about. And so when we have a lot of different people providing input, it can be a very timely process and may drag on for days, for weeks, for months. I've worked on a lot of projects where it's taken almost a year to come to consensus on branding. And I know that I believe in this case, we are under a tight timeline. So the more consultation we do, the more time that it eats up. And then what happens is that then as an artist, I and Megan were put under a lot more pressure at the end to come up with a final solution. So that's something to consider when we start talking about including other subcommittees or other task force to be part of this, simply because it's a time issue and it's also a monetary issue as well. So when we start doing more consultations, we call that scope creep. And that's where we begin to do things that aren't necessarily part of the original product planning. And so that's the danger in which we sometimes find ourselves in when we start talking about adding more and more people to the process.
So I'm wondering, Mark, if and just this gave me a little bit of time to think, to digest. I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity, because I've heard a few names now. There's a few kind of cultural experts. I wonder if there could just be kind of a follow-up with them directly. Like if we can go arrange, if it's Bess, if it's Louise, there might be just a few names to just to have this kind of secondary subcommittee, because this subcommittee is really kind of where you're trying to just make sure that you're on the right track, right? And I think what I've heard is you are, but there is a lot of comments about you just really making sure that this is grounded culturally by the three communities, just with these key other perspectives. So I'm thinking it wouldn't be that much of a scope creep for us to arrange just you know, maybe a follow-up virtual meeting with just those people, that you can kind of have this follow-up meeting leading up to the steering committee on the 1st of February, where you actually present your logo. And I'm wondering if that captures enough. I'm just trying to facilitate this. Let me know if I hit the mark here, everybody.
And just so to remind people too, as we were saying, this is to get this process of engaging citizens into the DACA and getting their input. It doesn't mean that this logo will be forever, but it's for this particular process. It could be that people decide that this is something that speaks to them and they want to keep it, but it's really to engage people. And so we don't want to get bogged down into doing many meetings. And so I would agree with Blair, like maybe we get the people that, because there was a bit of an oversight, but you know, we got to keep this moving anyway. And I think we're like excellent work done. And I think we could probably identify a few people from TTC, as Dave said, that he's on his own, and we could just do that. And with Louise maybe as well, with Chantal, do it soon and do it. Would that be okay?
So can I tell a story, Lynn? I know you love stories.
Sure. Yeah. We have 15 minutes.
All right, I'll try to keep it down to 7.5 then. You know, there's one time when the Deshiton, Uncle Peter went to Sitka. And when he went to Sitka, there's Deshiton people that said, you guys got a house, you know, in Angoon. And so Uncle Peter came back and he talked to Uncle Johnny, Auntie Angela, and my mother. And he said, you know, there's a house down there. We should go tend to it. So we set up a meeting to go down there. And we did. We went to Angoon. We met with the Deshiton, with Matthew, Fred, and Bessie, and them. And when we met with them, Matthew came up to the Yukon. He came up to the Yukon. He was Kasha Deheni, right, for the Deshiton. And when he came out, you know, he said, I think now it's time you guys start looking at a crest hat, a clan hat, because we didn't have them in here. Auntie Angela had, you know, that one hat that's used as a matriarch's hat, but we didn't have sort of crest hats. Matthew said, I think it's time, you know, that you guys should think about that. And so we did. Uncle Peter passed away in the meantime, but Uncle Johnny, my mother, and Auntie Angela got together and they said, okay, well, we should make this, we should start looking at this. Who are we going to get? So they said, well, let's talk to Keith, because Keith was one of the few ones that was, you know, working on sort of these kind of ceremonial atu kind of objects at that time. So they came out. And what they did is they sat Keith down. They started telling Deshiton stories. Here's what the Deshiton, here's how they came inland. This is what we do. This is the area we are. This is this thing. And they just told him a whole bunch of stories. And so Keith went away and he started trying to figure out how to put those stories into this hat, right? How do you put those stories into that hat? And the first time the hat sort of came out, it wasn't done because Keith was still struggling with it. It came out at Uncle Johnny's, at his funeral, his potlatch, but we didn't veil it. We didn't unveil it because it wasn't done yet, right? But it sat at that potlatch, at his year after potlatch, right? Just in a bag, and we didn't open it up. It was just sitting there. And then he worked on it again because he said he was struggling with it a little bit. And you know, you need to hear more stories. So he'd come back and he'd visit with, you know, Mom and Auntie Angela and Uncle, you know, well, Uncle was gone after that point in time. So they talked more about it. It was Auntie Angela's potlatch when that we paid Auntie Mary, Charlie's mom, we paid her to put it on peat. Right, and that's when that hat came out, and it took about 12 years for that hat to come out. So sometimes when you're working with the sacred objects and these types of things, it don't come easy, right? If we look at the same, Charlie can talk about the stories about the Duckluedi hat. It took a long time. It didn't just come out, right? So I know that we want to be expedient. I know that we want to be conscious of time and we want to be conscious of money and this type of thing. But at the same time, what's utmost important is we want to be conscious of our clans, of our nations, of our people, right? That has to be first and foremost. Now, I don't know how you guys are working, and you're the experts. You talk about branding, all of these types of things. But I think you don't compromise culture, right, for contemporary, right? We need to keep that moving. And I'm not trying to put undue stresses or whatnot, but you always have to keep that in mind, is that this is a people we're talking about. These are clans, these are our nations. You know, for the flag for Canada to come out, didn't come out in 1 year. I mean, we had about what, 3, 4, 5, 6 year debate for us to change the flag of Canada to start representing who Canada was as a nation. Does everybody agree with it? Probably not, but it was a process. And part of that process is a building of that unity, of who we are. That needs to be a part of it. That's a stepping stone to being that. So the branding isn't something that takes us to get to an end product. The branding, what we're doing here is building. It is the relationship building. That is the heart of what we're doing here, right? And I think we don't compromise those things from my perspective. You know, those can't be compromised. So I don't know how you figure it out, and I'm not trying to say one way or the other. It's just that how do we ensure that we don't lose the integrity in this type of thing in terms of, you know, expediency and this type of thing. So anyway, I'll shut up now because that's my 7.5 minute rant.
Thank you very much, Mark. Those are very powerful words. They speak and resonate with me. You know, I didn't mean to show any disrespect to the culture or the people. This is for the people, by the people, and I totally appreciate that and respect that. So we can definitely, what I was trying to say was that we aren't going to have another meeting. Yes, we will have another meeting. You guys will have the opportunity to share the artwork that was shared today, along with a rationale. We can definitely line up another meeting with the other cultural advisors at a point in the future. We can definitely do that, because the more ideas, the more comments that are made at this stage of the game, this is when we should be doing that, because this is very important with any sort of visual identity. The more information that we have as artists, as communicators, and the more input that we have from those that are part of this project, or our stakeholders, or target audiences, that's important. And that's something that I don't ever dismiss, and I take it very seriously, because what happens in the end, once we have all of the insight and the comments gathered, we can make those adjustments to the mark and the artwork that is developed. And we take that very seriously, because really this is not about us and necessarily time. It's about producing an icon or logo or brand that best reflects who you are. And so the only way that we can get to that stage, when we come up with an amazing logo and a mark that you all can be proud of, is that we include all of those voices. And so that is the ultimate goal, is to be able to include all of the comments, all of the teachings that become part of this mark, part of this logo. And so what we want to be able to do is represent that in one mark. And that's not an easy job. But you are right. This is definitely a collaborative process. And it's not just one way. It's not just me and Megan saying, this is what it is, take it. This is a very much a collaborative process, much like Mark has said, that if we need to go and consult with other people and other knowledge keepers, I am more than happy to do that. Actually, I would much prefer that, because that way we produce something that you guys can all be proud of, and that you're part of this project, and that, you know, we'll have something that has much more deeper meaning and significance. And the only way we can do that is when we work collaboratively and work with these knowledge keepers, and like yourself, Mark, and Dave, and everyone here. So we'll definitely be able to move forward in a positive way and get more input.
Okay.
And Mark, I love your stories, man. I love them. I'm sorry we had to limit you to 7.5 minutes.
Great.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm good.
I just feels like we found a wrap. Unless there's anything outstanding, I'll be quiet for a few seconds if there's any last comments.
Yeah, sure. I'll just say something quick because I haven't spoken at all here. The art is super cool. If I had to choose, I'd choose option 2, but it's all cool. I can't speak from a cultural perspective, and I see all of the sides on this, and it's up to, I guess, whoever is paying for it, the time and the energy that you want to put into each aspect of the process.
Thank you.
So I could just make one last comment, and I think very good work. I really appreciate, you know, there's that story, Megan, you should remember it, you know, about how Keith, right, the spirit was breathed into him. We used it when we opened the Potlatch House, but really, I want to acknowledge the M&M team, Mark and Megan team, because I think what you're beginning to do is you have the great honor and privilege of breathing life into something. And not many artists get that honor to breathe life into something, right? Whether it's a logo or a potlatch house or whatever it is. And so that's a huge responsibility, but I think it's also a huge honor. And so thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, Gdc and Miigwech, Mark, for those very kind words. I'm actually tearing up. Thank you very much. This is very, very powerful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We will follow up with this and let everybody know what kind of comes about with the next step. And but to be sure, we'll be seeing everybody at the next steering committee meeting, I think scheduled February 1st. If there's anybody else with any closing comments, just want to thank everybody for their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Okay, take care everybody.
Thank
Have
you
a great
all.
week.
Bye-bye. Good work.
Thank you, everyone.
Actually, can I get out? Megan, can you stay on for a bit?
Yep. I was thinking the same thing.